I'm Ann Simmons, reporting from the newsroom of the Los Angeles Times. The crisis in Syria has dominated US headlines in recent days. The casualty count has continued to rise as fighting rages across the country. Hundreds of thousands of Syrians have fled and taken refuge in neighbouring nations. And now the crisis has reached a new level as the United States prepares for a possible military attack against the Syrian government over its alleged use of chemical weapons. Times reporter Raja Abdulrahim has been in Syria on assignment in recent months. She joins me today from Cairo to give an update on the crisis in Syria. Hello, Raja.
Hi, Anne.
Raja, tell us first of all, what is the situation in Syria? Is there fighting in the streets right now, and is it just confined to the capital or all over the country?
Yes, and unfortunately, there's been no let up in the violence. There's clashes still ongoing across the country, around the capital, to the northernmost border, to the south. In recent weeks, we've actually seen sort of a new rebel offensive push into the western Latakia province, which is sort of mostly the stronghold of President Bashar al-Assad. So we're seeing also places that had been relatively calm before are now seeing increased fighting.
And how is this impacting civilians? How are they coping on a day-to-day basis? Are they going to school, to work? How are they coping?
It really depends on where you are. In Syria, some places are still controlled by the government. Some places are controlled by the opposition. The opposition areas tend to be regularly, either under threat of bombardment, shelling or regularly shelled. Some areas don't have regular school sessions because the school buildings have been full of refugees for months, if not a year. In some places, the economy has been really downgraded, and a lot of people are out of work. There's also a lot of food shortages in areas. But given that the conflict has been going on for so long, Syrians have sort of adapted to this wartime, life, and so they're still kind of learning how to navigate their daily life despite the clashes and shelling in some areas.
And of course, on top of this now, we have this alleged chemical attack. What have you heard from your sources on the ground about who might be responsible for that?
Right. Well, most of the people that I spoke with are residents and activists who live in the towns themselves that were affected. The town of Mu'addamiyya and then the eastern suburbs of Damascus. And these are all opposition areas. So everyone I've spoken to has blamed the attack on the government.
And are people preparing for a possible military strike, but from the international community?
They are. There is definitely this feeling that it's imminent in a lot of towns and cities now. Today and yesterday we're seeing sort of a bread shortage because people are trying to stock up on bread, which is a staple of the Syrian diet, as well as other food basics. And we're seeing people who are kind of going down to the basements to live, or going to friends and families that have basements is sort of seen as the safest place to wait out a strike. I spoke with a resident in Mu'addamiyya Sham, which was one of the sites of the alleged chemical attack, and where UN inspectors were 2 days ago. And they're actually next to a military airport and the military's 4th Armored Division. So that the people there are trying to get as far away from any sort of military installation as they can, seen as a
Right.
possible strike target.
And just to wrap up, Raja, tell us, what is the mood like there in general? Because of course people have been under duress for so long and the international community has not intervened. Are people convinced that any action will actually be taken?
They're convinced that some action is going to be taken, but they're not necessarily convinced that it's actually going to do anything. I think given that they've heard a lot of international talk from the beginning, but not a lot of action. A lot of Syrians take a very bleak view towards any kind of foreign, whether Arab or Western, intentions toward their country. So even the people who do welcome the U.S. Possible U.S. airstrikes are somewhat pessimistic about what, if anything, it's even going to accomplish.
Well, Raja, thank you so much for your insight. We are going to continue, of course, to follow this story. And for more on the crisis in Syria, please visit latimes.com.